Proceedings. Thank you, officer. I'll review these immediately.
Let me tell you something, people. The man sitting in my courtroom had killed someone. Not allegedly, not supposedly. He had actually taken a human life. He walked away with barely a scratch and served exactly 11 months behind bars before his family's money opened the gates and set him free. But here's what nobody in that packed courtroom expected that day. What made my bailiff's hand instinctively move closer to his belt? What caused a 52-year-old mother to let out a sound so primal that grown men in the gallery looked away in pain? It wasn't the killing itself. It wasn't even the pathetic sentence he'd served. It was what Brandon Whitmore said about the night he ended Sarah Chen's life. 4 words, just 4 words, that would make me stand up from my bench for only the 3rd time in my entire television career. 4 words that would be replayed 50 million times across every social media platform on Earth. 4 words that would prove some people view human lives as nothing more than inconvenient obstacles in their privileged existence. And the sentence I gave him in response, it wasn't prison time. I couldn't send him back to jail. I'm a civil judge. I don't have that power. But what I ordered instead was so brilliantly cruel, so devastatingly perfect, that legal experts would debate it for years, and Brandon Whitmore would spend the next 47 years wishing he'd just kept his mouth shut and shown 1 ounce of remorse for the nursing student, whose future he'd stolen at 85 miles per hour, while drunk, texting, and laughing. That Tuesday afternoon in Los Angeles, my courtroom was packed. You don't usually see that for a small claims case with only $5,000 at stake. But word had spread through victim advocacy groups and local news networks that something significant was about to unfold. Sarah Chen's story had touched the community deeply. She was 23 years old, a first-generation college student, 3 months away from her nursing degree, 2 weeks away from marrying her childhood sweetheart. And she was killed instantly when Brandon Whitmore's Mercedes S-Class obliterated her Honda Civic at an intersection she'd driven through 1,000 times before now. Let's talk about the criminal case, because it was a disgrace. Second-degree murder charges, mysteriously reduced to vehicular manslaughter after Brandon's father, Charles Whitmore, made a $250,000 contribution to the district attorney's re-election campaign. 3-year sentence that became 11 months with good behavior in a minimum security facility that had laptops, conjugal visits, and better food than most college cafeterias. The kind of justice that makes ordinary people lose faith in the system entirely. And frankly, I don't blame them. I watched Linda Chin enter my courtroom, wearing the same simple black dress she'd worn to her daughter's funeral 847 days earlier. She'd lost 43 pounds since that March morning when police officers knocked on her door at 6:15 a.m. and destroyed her entire world with a single sentence. Her hands trembled as she clutched a worn folder containing handwritten records, printed text messages, and a photograph of Sarah in her nursing school scrubs, smiling, that brilliant smile that would never light up another room. Linda's husband couldn't attend that day. He'd suffered a massive heart attack for months after Sarah's death, triggered by the stress and grief, and now he sat in a wheelchair at home, unable to work, unable to function, a shadow of the man who'd immigrated to America 30 years ago, believing hard work and honesty would build a good life for his family. Their younger daughter, Michelle, now 17, had found out about her sister's death on her 15th birthday. She hadn't celebrated a birthday since the trauma had been so severe she needed to be homeschooled for a year. Let me make something very clear. This $5,000 lawsuit was not about money. Linda Chin had spent $180,000 on funeral costs, legal fees, therapy, and medical bills. $5,000 wouldn't even cover Sarah's casket, but it was the maximum amount allowed in small claims court. And more importantly, it was the only way Linda could look Brandon Whitmore in the eyes and have someone with authority finally validate that her daughter's life had mattered. Then Brandon Whitmore walked in, and I swear, the temperature in that courtroom seemed to drop 20 degrees. 29 years old, wearing a $6,000 navy Brioni suit, a $45,000 Rolex Daytona gleaming on his wrist, Italian leather shoes that cost more than Linda's monthly rent. He had AirPods in his ears, which he removed with casual annoyance, as if my courtroom was an inconvenient interruption to whatever podcast he'd been enjoying. He did not look at Linda Chin, not even a glance. He slouched into the defendant's chair, immediately pulled out his phone, and started scrolling through what appeared to be Instagram, his thumb moving in that unconscious rhythm of someone completely disconnected from the gravity of the moment. His lawyer, a sharp-dressed man in his 50s who'd made a career defending wealthy clients against their own consequences, leaned over and whispered something. And Brandon smirked. Actually smirked. Several people in the gallery saw it and audibly gasped. This was a man sitting 20 feet away from a mother whose daughter he'd killed, and he was smirking at his lawyer's joke like they were at a cocktail party. Before I go any further, let me tell you something, people. I need you to do something for me right now. Hit that subscribe button, because what you're about to witness is the most satisfying moment of courtroom justice ever captured on camera. I am about to dismantle this man's entire existence, expose a pattern of behavior so disturbing it'll make your blood boil, and deliver a sentence so creative, so perfectly tailored to his crime, that it'll restore your faith that accountability still exists in this world. Seriously, subscribe right now. Turn on notifications, because we're posting cases like this every single week, where entitled people learn that consequences are real, and money can't buy you out of everything. Now, let's get back to the moment everything changed. I sat at my bench, reviewing the case file one final time, at 78 years old. After 25 years as a family court judge in Manhattan, and handling over 20,000 cases, I had developed what my colleagues like to call an almost supernatural ability to detect lies, manipulation, and remorseless predators within the first 30 seconds of testimony. I'd spent the previous evening reading this case file, and everything about it had made my blood pressure rise to dangerous levels. I'd read Sarah Ch's scholarship essays about wanting to work in pediatric nursing because she'd watched her grandmother die from inadequate health care and wanted to make sure no other family suffered that way. I reviewed the accident reconstruction report showing Brandon had been driving 85 miles per hour in a 35 miles per hour zone. His blood alcohol level, 19. More than twice the legal limit. His phone records showed he'd sent 3 text messages in the 2 minutes before impact. I'd examined the photographs from the crash scene that showed Sarah's Honda Civic compressed to half its original length. The medical examiner's report confirmed she died on impact, never regaining consciousness. Her last text message to her mother, sent 4 minutes before Brandon Whitmore decided her life was worth less than his convenience. And I didn't stop at the file. I made some phone calls. Contacted the sentencing judge from Brandon's criminal case off the record and learned about the political pressure applied to reduce charges. I spoke with the prison warden who'd overseen Brandon's 11-month stay and heard about the special accommodations, the minimal restrictions, the comfortable routine that bore no resemblance to actual punishment. I subpoenaed Brandon's social media records and found posts that would make even the most forgiving person question whether this man had learned anything at all from taking a human life. And I discovered something else, something that would become the nuclear bomb I'd detonate in the middle of this trial, something Brandon Whitmore had no idea I knew about. I closed the file, looked up at the courtroom with the same piercing eyes that have intimidated thousands of liars, and I prepared to conduct not just a trial, but a masterclass in why human dignity cannot be purchased with money, and why some people desperately need to learn that cruelty has consequences, no matter how many zeros sit in their trust fund. My voice cut through the courtroom, silence like a surgical blade, precise, commanding. Mr. Whitmore, you're being sued by Mrs. Linda Chen for $5,000 related to funeral expenses for her daughter Sarah, whom you killed on March 14, 2022, while driving drunk at 85 miles per hour. Before we discuss money, I want to establish the facts clearly for this court. Mrs. Chen, please tell me about your daughter. Linda's voice trembled as she began speaking, her accent thickening with emotion, each word requiring visible effort to push past the grief lodged in her throat. Your Honor, Sarah was studying for her final exams the night she died. She was 3 months from graduating nursing school, top 15% of her class. She volunteered at Children's Hospital every Saturday morning, reading to kids with cancer. She was engaged to Michael Rodriguez, her high school sweetheart. They were getting married June 18th. She had her dress picked out, white lace with pearl buttons, hanging in our closet right now because I cannot bring myself to return it. Linda pulled out her phone with shaking hands and showed me the last text message she'd ever received from her daughter. She texted me at 9:13 p.m. It said, "Almost home, Mom. Love you. See you in 10 minutes." 4 minutes later, she was dead. She never saw 10 minutes. She never came home. And I have spent every single night for the last 847 days reading that text message before I can fall asleep. The courtroom was absolutely silent except for the sound of Linda's sister quietly crying in the front row. My expressions stayed controlled, but anyone who knows me could see the slight tension in my jaw, the way my eyes had gone from sharp to absolutely piercing. Mr. Whitmore, do you dispute any of these facts? Brandon barely looked up from his phone, his voice carrying that particular kind of bored arrogance that comes from never having faced real consequences. No, Your Honor. The accident happened. I was convicted. I served my time, but we're here about a civil claim, and I think we need to separate the emotional aspects from the legal reality of what Mrs. Chin is actually entitled to receive. My eyebrows raised slowly, dangerously. The legal reality, I see. So, you acknowledge you were driving drunk, nearly 3 times over the speed limit, while texting and you killed Sarah Chin. Those facts are established. Brandon shrugged. Several people in the gallery made sounds of disgust. I acknowledged that in criminal court. Yes, I paid my debt to society. I went to prison for almost a year. At some point, Your Honor, we need to move forward. Those words hung in the air like a grenade with a pin pulled. Move forward. I leaned forward slightly, and the entire courtroom recognized this as a very dangerous sign. Move forward. Interesting phrase. Mr. Whitmore, tell me, what have you been doing since your release 8 months ago? How have you been moving forward with your life? His lawyer started to interject, but Brandon waved him off with the confidence of someone who's never been truly challenged. I've been rebuilding. Your Honor, my father gave me a position at his real estate development company as junior vice president. I'm managing a portfolio of commercial properties, getting back to normal life, reconnecting with friends and colleagues. I've moved forward productively. I gave him a smile colder than a Montana winter. Productively, would you like to know what Linda Chin has been doing these past 8 months, Mr. Whitmore? I didn't wait for an answer. She works 16-hour days at her dry cleaning business because she's buried under $180,000 in debt from burying her daughter, from legal fees, from therapy she needs just to get out of bed in the morning. She takes 4 different medications to sleep, to function, to not collapse under the weight of grief. Her husband had a heart attack from the stress and can no longer work. Her younger daughter needed intensive therapy and missed an entire year of school. That's how she's been moving forward. Brandon's face showed a flicker of discomfort, but he recovered quickly, that entitled armor sliding back into place. That's very tragic, Your Honor, but those aren't my legal responsibilities. The criminal court determined my sentence. Everything else is just unfortunately part of life's tragedies. My pen stopped moving. I looked up slowly, and my next words came out quiet, deadly. Life's tragedies. You just called the consequences of your choices life's tragedies. My bailiff shifted his stance. He recognized the tone. Brandon had no idea. He'd just stepped onto a landmine that was about to detonate his entire world, reached beneath my bench, and pulled out a folder so thick it made an audible thud when I placed it on the surface in front of me. For the first time, I watched Brandon Whitmore's eyes actually flicker towards something that resembled concern, but he quickly masked it with that same practiced indifference that had carried him through life's obstacles without ever truly facing them. Mr. Whitmore, I spent considerable time investigating your case because something about your 11-month sentence for killing someone while driving drunk at catastrophic speeds didn't sit right with me. Would you like to know what I discovered? His lawyer immediately stood up, his voice carrying that professional smoothness designed to deflect. Your Honor, the criminal proceedings are closed and adjudicated. They're not relevant to this civil claim for funeral expenses. I didn't even look at him. Sit down, counselor. Your client put his character and credibility at issue the moment he claimed he'd paid his debt to society, about to show this court exactly what that debt actually cost him. I opened the folder with deliberate precision. The rustle of papers was the only sound in that frozen courtroom. Let's start with your criminal history, Mr. Whitmore. This wasn't your first encounter with driving under the influence, was it? Brandon's face went pale beneath his expensive tan. I object to this line of questioning, Your Honor. My laugh was sharp, humorless. You don't get to object, Mr. Whitmore. You're not a lawyer. You're a defendant who's about to learn that I do my homework. I pulled out the first document, holding it up for the cameras to capture clearly. DUI number 1, September 2014. You were 19 years old, arrested with a blood alcohol level of 0.14 after crashing your father's Porsche into a mailbox. Charges mysteriously dismissed. After your father made a $50,000 donation to the Police Athletic League. DUI number 2, March 2017, age 22. Blood alcohol, 0.16. Reckless driving, resisting arrest, reduced to a wet reckless. $500 fine, traffic school completed online. DUI number 3, August 2020, age 26. Blood alcohol, 0.18. Crashed into a parked car, left the scene, reduced to reckless driving after your father's attorney negotiated for 6 months, and then DUI number 4, March 14, 2022, blood alcohol, 1985 miles per hour, in a residential zone, texting while driving. And this time, Mr. Whitmore, this time your actions didn't just damage property. This time you killed Sarah Chin. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. People shaking their heads, someone in the back row saying loudly enough to be heard, 4 times, "Oh my God," 4 times. Linda Chin was sobbing into her hands, her whole body shaking as the pattern she'd suspected but never been able to prove was laid out in official documents for everyone to see. I wasn't finished, not by a long shot. 4 separate incidents where you got behind the wheel of a car while intoxicated. For separate times, your father's money made the consequences disappear like magic, until the 4th time when the consequence was a 23-year-old woman who will never graduate, never get married, never have children, never grow old, because you decided your convenience was more important than her life. Brandon tried to speak, his voice cracking slightly. Your Honor, those previous incidents were mistakes. I was young and immature. I've learned from them. My expression could have cut glass. Learned from them. You killed someone on your 4th DUI, Mr. Whitmore. What exactly did you learn? That you could keep doing it until you murdered somebody. That your family's money would always save you. I pulled out another stack of papers, these printed from social media platforms, and the images on them made several gallery members gasp audibly. Let's talk about what you've learned, shall we? These are posts from your Instagram account since your release 8 months ago. I held up the first one. A photo of Brandon at an exclusive nightclub holding a bottle of champagne, surrounded by friends. The caption read, "Back where I belong with champagne bottle in." The date stamp showed it was posted exactly 2 weeks after his release from prison. This is what remorse looks like. Apparently, 2 weeks out of jail, and you're partying in nightclubs with $1,000 bottles of champagne. The next photo showed Brandon on a beach in the Bahamas, arms spread wide, perfect tan, designer sunglasses, caption, "New Year, New Me, good vibes only." My voice dropped to that deadly quiet tone. This was posted on January 4th of this year. Do you know what else happened on January 4th, Mr. Whitmore? That was Sarah Chun's 25th birthday, the birthday she never got to celebrate because you killed her. And you posted good vibes only on the day her family was visiting her grave with a birthday cake she'd never eat. If you're watching this, and you believe drunk drivers who show zero remorse deserve real accountability, smash that like button right now. I mean, it absolutely destroy it, and drop a comment saying justice for Sarah, because this case proves that sometimes the legal system fails, but I never do. We're just getting to the part where I reveal what Brandon said about that night. The 4 words that will make you understand why this man deserves everything. That's coming to him. Don't you dare click away now. Section 4. The fatal 4 words, 700 words. Brandon Whitmore's carefully constructed facade was beginning to crack, like expensive porcelain under pressure. His lawyer was whispering frantically in his ear, probably telling him to stay quiet, to let the attorney handle the responses, but Brandon's ego wouldn't allow it. He'd spent 29 years being the smartest person in every room his father's money could buy access to, and the idea that a television judge that I was systematically dismantling his life in front of millions of viewers was more than his pride could tolerate. I pulled out another document. This one appeared to be phone records, highlighted in yellow marker, across multiple pages. Mr. Whitmore, I subpoenaed your text messages from the night of March 14, 2022, the night you killed Sarah Chin. Would you like me to read them aloud? Or would you prefer to tell this court what you were doing in the hours before you got behind the wheel drunk? Brandon's jaw clenched, a muscle twitching visibly in his cheek. I was at a friend's party. I had some drinks. I've never denied that. My eyes narrowed. Some drinks. Let's be specific, shall we? I began reading from the records, my voice clear and damning. 8:47 p.m. You texted your friend Marcus saying, and I quote, "Bro, I'm up, LMO with 3 beer emoji." 9:02 p.m. Marcus texted you back saying, "Get an Uber, man. Don't drive." Your response, Mr. Whitmore, was, "I'm fine. I've done this a million times. Literally done it a million times." 9:15 p.m. 2 minutes before you killed Sarah Chin, you texted your girlfriend saying, "Almost there, baby," with a kiss emoji. You were texting while driving 85 miles per hour, while drunk, and your friend specifically told you not to drive. But you were so arrogant, so absolutely certain that rules didn't apply to you, that you did it anyway. The courtroom was completely silent, except for Linda Chen's quiet weeping. I set down the phone records and picked up what appeared to be a police report, my reading glasses sliding slightly down my nose as I scanned the page. But here's what really interests me. Mr. Whitmore, this is the arresting officer's report from that night. Officer Michael Patterson responded to the scene at 9:23 p.m. He found you standing outside your vehicle, relatively uninjured despite the collision. Sarah Chin was already dead, trapped in her vehicle. Do you remember what you said to Officer Patterson when he approached you? Brandon's face went from pale to gray. His lawyer's hand shot up. Your Honor, anything my client said at the scene could have been influenced by shock and trauma from the accident. My voice cracked like a whip. This wasn't an accident, counselor. Accidents are unavoidable. Your client made choices, multiple deliberate choices. Now sit down. I turned my full attention back to Brandon, and the intensity of my gaze made him physically shrink in his chair. Officer Patterson's report states, and this is a direct quote, "When I informed the driver that the other vehicle's occupant was deceased, the driver, later identified as Brandon Whitmore, stated, she came out of nowhere." Then, Mr. Whitmore, when the officer explained that you had run a red light at high speed, do you remember what you said next? Brandon's voice came out as barely a whisper. I don't remember. I was in shock. I stood up from my bench, something I almost never do, and the entire courtroom seemed to hold its collective breath. You said, and I have this from 3 separate witnesses, including 2 paramedics and Officer Patterson. You said these exact 4 words: "This ruins everything." The courtroom exploded. People were shouting, gasping, some crying. My bailiff had to call for order multiple times, his voice barely cutting through the chaos. Linda Chin let out a scream that sounded like it came from the deepest part of her soul, a sound of pure anguish that made even the camera operators look away. "This ruins everything," I repeated, my voice shaking with barely controlled fury. Not, "Oh my God, is she okay?" Not, "Please help her." Not, "What have I done?" Your first thought, standing next to a car with a dead woman inside, a woman you had just killed with your reckless, selfish, criminal behavior, was that her death ruins everything for you. Brandon tried to speak, his voice desperate now. That's taken out of context. I was in shock. I didn't mean it that way. My laugh was absolutely withering. Out of context. What context makes those words acceptable, Mr. Whitmore? What possible context makes a young woman's death about how it affects your life? I sat back down slowly, deliberately, my eyes never leaving his face. But we're not done yet, because what you said next makes it even worse. Section 5. The sentence that broke the internet. 700 words. I leaned forward, my voice dropping to that lethal quietness that makes every person in my courtroom strain to hear every syllable. After you said, "This ruins everything," Officer Patterson asked you to step away from the vehicle. You were belligerent, argumentative. And then you said something that made Officer Patterson note in his report that he'd never encountered such callousness in 15 years of police work. You looked at Sarah Chen's destroyed vehicle, at the emergency responders trying desperately to extract her body, and you said, "Do you know who my father is? He'll have your badge for this. I want my lawyer. This is getting handled tonight." The words landed like physical blows. Brandon was shaking now, all pretense of composure completely shattered. "Your Honor, please. I was drunk and traumatized and not thinking clearly. You can't judge someone's character based on what they said in the worst moment of their life." My response was instantaneous and devastating. "The worst moment of your life, Mr. Whitmore. The worst moment was Sarah Chen's. The moment your Mercedes hit her car at 85 miles per hour and crushed her body so severely, the coroner's report says, she died instantly from catastrophic internal injuries. That was the worst moment. You standing there worried about your reputation was just you being exactly who you've always been, a selfish, entitled, remorseless man who views other human beings as obstacles. I opened my folder one final time and pulled out a single sheet of paper. Here's my ruling. Mrs. Chin, you are awarded the full $5,000 for funeral expenses, plus $850 in court costs. Mr. Whitmore will pay $5,850 immediately. For a split second, Brandon actually looked relieved. His lawyer exhaled visibly, probably thinking they'd gotten off easy, that this was almost over. They had no idea. I was just beginning. But we're not finished. Not even close. My voice took on a tone that made seasoned court reporters look up from their notepads. Mr. Whitmore, I don't have the authority to send you back to prison. I can't add to your criminal sentence. I'm a civil court judge, but I do have the authority to impose conditions on this judgment that you will comply with, or face contempt charges and financial penalties that will bankrupt you. Are we clear? Brandon nodded weakly, his voice gone. For the next 47 years, until Sarah Chen would have turned 70 years old, you will attend her grave on March 14th, the anniversary of her death. Not alone. You will stand there with Linda Chin, and you will listen to her tell you about the year of Sarah's life you stole. Every single year. If you miss even 1 year, this judgment increases by $50,000, and I will personally pursue contempt charges. You will remember her, Mr. Whitmore. You don't get to forget and move forward. You'll face what you did every year for 47 years. The courtroom erupted in gasps and murmurs. Brandon's face had gone completely white. Furthermore, every year on Sarah's birthday, January 4th, you will make a $1,000 donation to a scholarship fund in her name at her nursing school. That's $47,000 over the life of this order, funding 47 nursing students who will save lives Sarah never got to save. And finally, you will complete 2,000 hours of community service at the Children's Hospital where Sarah volunteered. You'll wear an identification badge with her photograph on it. Every sick child you help, every family you assist, do it with Sarah's face pinned to your chest, so you never forget she was real, that she mattered, that she had value far beyond being an obstacle that ruined your evening. Brandon was crying, now genuine tears streaming down his face for the first time. Your Honor, please, this is excessive. This is cruel. 47 years of this is torture. My final words rang through the courtroom like a bell-tolling judgment. Cruel. Linda Chin got a life sentence when you killed her daughter. Life without parole, without good behavior reductions, without the possibility that Daddy's money will open the gates early. You get 47 years of remembering. She gets forever of grieving. And if you think for 1 second that's unfair, Mr. Whitmore, then you've learned absolutely nothing. I raised my gavel. You told Officer Patterson that Sarah's death ruined everything for you. Well, now her memory will define everything about you. For 47 years, you won't be Brandon Whitmore, Junior Vice President. You'll be the man who killed Sarah Chin. And every year, you'll have to prove you remember that. We're adjourned. The gavel struck with thunderous finality. If this story restored your faith that justice still exists, that accountability still matters, then you need to subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because we're bringing you cases every week where entitled people learn that money can't buy redemption, where grieving families get their voices heard, where I remind you that human dignity matters more than any bank account. Share this video with everyone who needs to remember that Sarah Chin was real, that her life had value, that she deserved better than being someone's inconvenient obstacle. Comment 47 years if you believe this sentence was justice. Linda Chin walked out of my courtroom holding her daughter's photograph, and for the first time in 847 days, she smiled. Not because she got money, because someone finally made him remember, because I gave Sarah's life the dignity it deserved. That's not revenge, that's justice.